You're focusing a lot on what we call the installment method. So talk a little bit about how this came about.
They had voted to make wholesaling illegal. How do I get around that? Installment contracts have been around since the 1800s, where one guy would go, hey, I am going to pay this equitable deposit down, gives me equitable ownership on this deed, and then I will make a series of payments until I pay that off, and then the deed is transferred to me. What if I give you $500 now and I pay your mortgage until we close? We are going to be listed on the title with you as equitable ownership. Then we're going to end up closing in 90 days and you're going to get the final amount. They go to a closing where they actually sign the deed over to me. Essentially, they're just holding that signed copy until we do our BC closing. That seller can't do anything without me signing away. I now can go and list it on the MLS. I flip the property. You could actually do a cash out refinance on it without ever buying the house.
You're focusing a lot on what we call the installment method. So talk a little bit about how this came about. Talk about what you're doing with creative finance
Fantastic.
and with the installment method.
Yeah, so what we're doing with creative finance is two parts. We do a ton of sub-twos, and then we do a lot of installment methods. So this is how it came about. Last April, I was at a CG meeting, Collective Genius meeting, and I ran into these guys in South Carolina, and I'm in North Carolina, and I was like, oh, nice, let me get to know you guys. And they're like, what do you do? And I said, oh, we buy and we wholesale and we do a lot of flips and development and new builds and all this stuff in North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida. And they're like, oh, you're in South Carolina? And I said, yeah. And they're like, oh, did you know that wholesaling is outlawed, essentially illegal in South Carolina? And I was like, oh, interesting. And they said, yeah, we're working with this attorney. His name is Gary Pickering. He's one of the 9 real estate commissioners in South Carolina. And he went into a meeting one day. He woke up that morning. You could wholesale in South Carolina without an issue. They reviewed this case of this lady getting completely screwed over by a wholesaler. And in 15 minutes, they had voted to make wholesaling essentially illegal and outlawed in South Carolina. You will get, if they catch, if anybody reports you, it could be a buyer, it could be a real estate agent. Anybody reports you for wholesaling in South Carolina, they will send you a cease and desist letter and a $20,000 fine per assignment. And so, yeah, it's wild. So what I thought of in that moment, I thought of two things. One, I never in my life want my kids, my family, the people I work for, and their family's life to be in jeopardy if 9 people just decide that you can't do what we do anymore, right? And so I was like, okay, how do we alleviate that? And then second, I thought, okay, that is going to eliminate a lot of competition in South Carolina. How do I get around that? And so then these guys started telling me about this thing called the installment method. And I was like, yo, this changes everything. This is wild. And so what it is essentially is, and I'll give you a little bit of a history. Installment contracts have been around since the 1800s. Because when you think about it, there weren't large banks to give out conventional loans on land and houses when people buy. So they would come up with installment land contracts where one guy would go, hey, I got my property over here. You want it? And then they would go into an installment contract of, between me and you, I am going to pay this equitable deposit down that puts me on the deed, gives me equitable ownership on this deed, and then I will make a series of payments until I pay that off, and then the deed is transferred to me. So then what ended up happening is in 1960s, 70s, when redlining was popular and minorities couldn't apply to get conventional loans and they would get denied, they began to use installment contracts again. But then it started to become very predatory towards these buyers because these are minorities renting from mostly not minorities. And whenever they would miss whenever they miss one payment, they would foreclose on them. So then a lot of states, regulations started coming out to protect the buyers, which is very interesting because then now, and then it started getting popular in the 90s and early 2000s. And then for the last 20 years, nobody's done them. I have no idea, but fun fact, 5.5% of all homes in America are on installment contracts. So there is literally IRS tax law, there is legal case study, and title companies title insurance companies insure on it. And so it's very if you understand it, if you have a closing attorney or title company that was around in the 90s, they know these things. And so they've done these before. And I think you said some people have even done installment because it's just an installment sale. It's a contract for deed, land, whatever. But then these guys that I was talking to really contextualized it to now. And so then we do them a lot now. So what we'll do is we'll go let's say, and this helps us a ton in foreclosures. because it allows us to create offers that nobody else can make. So a wholesaler is going to come in and go, your house is worth 300. I'll give you 160 for it because that's 70% minus repairs plus my fee. I'll give you 160. And a person's like, I want 200. And a wholesaler's like, that's my cash offer. So then what I do is I come in and I go, hey, Nick, my cash offer is 160, but I can talk to my underwriters in the back and see if you can, I don't know if you will, but I'll see if you fit our installment program. And essentially, I think I can get you that 200,000 now. That would mean that I would probably have to put it on the multiple listing service and send it out to more of my cash buyers. But that also means that I'd be able to give you $500 now. Would that be helpful for you? And you can do whatever you want with it. That's not going into the EMD, the money you'll see at closing. That's money in your pocket now. You do whatever you want with it. And these people, a lot of times they're like, yeah, that's really helpful for me. Or they're like, can you do a little more? And then I go, okay, what if I give you 500 now and $500 a month until we close? Or I pay your mortgage until we close. Would that be helpful? Then it's like, that's very helpful, right? They get to do whatever they want with that money. And then here's the really cool part about it. That money is credited back to me at closing. And so it actually doesn't even really come out of my pocket. So what happens is I'll go, all right, Nick, we're gonna have a closing in the next 7 days, 7 to 10 days. Our title company is gonna clear title, make sure everything's good to go. We're gonna do some of our due diligence. In the next 7 to 10 days, you're gonna get that $500. Once that happens, then we are going to be listed on the title with you as equitable ownership. Don't worry, Nick. That it still stays in your name. It doesn't transfer over to me. None of that. I'm just listed as having equitable ownership with you on the title. So I've got skin in the game because I'm actually putting money down and you do whatever you want with that money. Then we're going to end up closing in 90 days and you're going to get the final amount that 200,000 that we've agreed on. And so what happens now, Nick, this is wild. I have equitable ownership on that property better than a memorandum. So like with foreclosures, we know these people have made they have a track record of habitually making bad decisions. So I have literally gone to a closing table, wired money in, and then they went and signed and closed with somebody else already. Like I have, yeah, wild. So like I've done like people just make bad decisions. They're always going to shop out your contract in that process. But what's really effective is I'm not going, hey, let's get under contract, and in 30 and 45 days, I hope I'll sell you your house and get you your money. But I'm going, hey, I'm going to get you money in 7 days. What happens, this is wild. When we do that initial closing, and it is a closing, and I do put down a $500 equitable deposit. So like I'm actually investing now. I pay about three and a half thousand dollars per closing on that front end. So I got to have the money to do that. And I understand that. But what happens is they go to that closing. They're excited because within a week, they got their money. They got some money in their pocket. They go to a closing where they actually sign the deed over to me. The title company then holds that deed. It's called hold. They hold it in trust. Essentially, they're just holding that signed copy of the deed in escrow until we do our BC closing. So I then now can go and I am listed. So then the title company goes and they record that installment contract with the county. So I am now listed at the county with as having equitable ownership on that property. So if anybody were to come and pull title, I literally have to sign the paperwork for them to try to sell to somebody else. So that seller can't go to another wholesaler. That seller can't pull out debt against the house. That seller can't do anything without me signing away. And they've already signed the deed. So I never see them again. So I've used other methods where like, I'm like, hey, I'm putting this on the MLS. And then they still have to come and sign. So I have to go, hey, you're going to see that I'm going to make like $100,000. Please sign, please. Like, like, please. In this case, they see a settlement statement that says how much they're going to make. They sign it. They never show up again. They never sign another document again. It's fantastic. I now can go and list it on the MLS because I have equitable ownership of that property. I can go and flip, and I do this. I flip the property. If it's vacant, we'll just go ahead and flip it. I'm not worried about them selling it out from under me. So then like with other methods where you do this renovation and then they go, oh, you know what? I like what you've done to the house. I don't think I'm going to sell it anymore. No, they've already, like they've already signed it over to me. And so like they've already signed it. So we go ahead and renovate it, put it on the market and sell it. We can actually, this is awesome. Most title company, well, not most, a lot of lenders will actually recognize your equitable ownership and begin your seasoning period. And so then you could actually do a rate and term refinance on this property. So if you get it low enough, somewhat rental ready, I will go ahead and do an installment contract and then refinance rate and term. I don't have to pay any money out of pocket because I'm on the deed. So like I didn't, or sorry, my equitable ownership is on the deed. So then I don't even have to pull out money to originate it. I literally am just refinancing on a property that I own. So it's really, really crazy what you can do with this. And so we do that. I'm in the process right now. We had a deal fall through on the MLS. And it's a foreclosure, and the buyer got scared about it, even though we're upsetting it and they don't understand it. So over the weekend, I hit up my lender and I was like, "Hey, let's do a refi on this one." And it's an installment sale that we have. So we actually, because we're past the 90 days, are going to try to do a cash out refinance on it without ever buying the house. And we're going to cash out refi. That's crazy. And we don't even need money to originate it or anything because we actually have equitable ownership on that title. So it's insane. And it fully protects us from any regulation like that happened in South Carolina because we actually have legal ownership to market that property. And so and then it also protects us from sellers and then allows us to get a lot more money because we can put it on the MLS, allows us to flip out of it, allows us to refi out of it. It's wild. And so it's been a game changer for us. And we use it a ton when we want to lock in the profits. So for instance, like hedge funds, they like to cap your profits at like 20K if you're going to do an assignment. For this, we'll get this in, and we just sold it to a hedge fund for $81,000 because we are the sellers. We're not assigning anything. We're selling this house as the sellers. And so it's really cool what you can do with this. So if you have buyers that are like, I don't want to pay that much in an assignment fee, cool, I'm not assigning it, I'm selling it for this amount. And so it's a really cool strategy that we use, that we've been using for the last 7 months, and it's almost turned into exclusively what we use, especially with what I call flight risk sellers. And so so it locks in our profits and it protects us from sellers and regulation. It's fantastic, man.